Chloe's Cupid. Chapter 1. Chloe heard tinkling chimes as she walked into the dimly lit, busy broomstick. The smell of jasmine incense filled the air. Twinkling golden lights lined the periwinkle walls and dark mahogany shelves. Rows of labeled bottles were stacked together in bright pinks, purples, and blues. As Chloe's eyes adjusted to the lighting, she read the labels of aromatherapy-scented jars on one row: lavender, vanilla, peppermint, passion fruit, and more. The next row had similar fragranced lotions, and the next had matching scented candles. The opposite wall had spell books with gold lettering and faded spines. A potpourri of ingredients surrounded them: dried fruits, nuts, mushrooms, herbs, and flower petals. She paused. This was ludicrous. She should turn back around and leave this store. But Chloe was desperate. "Can I help you?" a woman asked. She faced the woman behind the counter. "You're Rose? Emma's aunt?" "Ah, you must be Chloe." Rose wore a long purple cotton dress, embellished with lace and sequins. The lightweight material was ideal for a California summer. Her dark, braided hair contained purple feathers, and her eyes were rimmed in midnight black eyeliner with dark, smoky eyeshadow. Chloe straightened. "Yes." Rose walked to the front of the store, locked the door, and flipped the open sign to closed. "Let's sit down and discuss your dilemma." Rose gestured to a pair of high-back, velvet-cushioned chairs. Chloe sat, tucked a strand of brown hair behind her ear, and clasped her hands in her lap. She fidgeted with the seam of her baby-blue yoga pants. Rose walked to a table and dispensed hot tea from a large insulated thermos. She handed the cup to Chloe. Chloe sipped. Chamomile. She probably shouldn't drink something that might make her sleepy first thing in the morning, but her nerves appreciated the soothing, warm liquid. Rose sat gently and crossed one leg over the other. Her relaxed demeanor helped calm Chloe's angst. "Now, how can I help?" Since Emma had referred Chloe to the busy broomstick, Chloe would see this through. She could back out at any time, she reminded herself. "My wedding is a week away," Chloe began. "Congratulations." "My third wedding." "Oh, my." "To the same man," Chloe sighed. "See, we've been engaged for 2 years. We plan to have our first wedding in Hawaii. Destination and island paradise all in one. But the Kilauea volcano erupted. For our second attempt at marriage, we opted for a ski lodge. No danger of volcanoes or tropical storms. But unfortunately, I got appendicitis. Whoosh, off to the hospital for emergency laparoscopic surgery. At least all the guests had travel insurance for that one." "You're worried about the third attempt," Rose said. "Yes, I mean, I know third time's a charm, but I'm at my wit's end here. We're staying local for the wedding, but Zach travels for work. He flies back tonight, so what could possibly go wrong, right?" Chloe gave a nervous chuckle before taking another sip of tea. Well, more of an undignified gulp. "What did you have in mind that I might be able to do?" Rose smiled warmly. "I don't know." Chloe didn't even know what Rose could do. Her friend Emma had said only that her aunt dealt with the supernatural and maybe could help. Chloe wouldn't be here if she wasn't so desperate to make the wedding happen. "I have no idea what you're capable of doing or how it could possibly help. I'm willing to be put in a hypnotic trance if it would help me stop worrying. Maybe you have tarot cards that would predict our happily ever after? Not that I'm naive enough to equate marriage with happily ever after. I know relationships take nurturing and work, but getting married has been a wicked hurdle we haven't cleared." Chloe pressed her lips together, determined to stop rambling. Rose gave her another warm and patient smile. "I don't induce trances or predict fortunes, but I think I can help." I'll make you a tincture of belladonna, rose petals, lavender, rosemary, cinnamon, and cloves. After you drink the potion, you'll be able to see a ghost for 7 days. A ghost? Chloe asked, sounding skeptical and trying not to sound rude. Not just any ghost. Cupid. As in arrow through the heart, Cupid? Yes. But you said ghost, not mythical creature. Yes, Cupid is quite an ancient ghost. His life was filled with love and loss. Now as a ghost, he helps others find love, perpetuating the stories about him. But there are several points you need to be aware of if you choose to go through with this. First, you will be the only one who can see and hear him. True mediums who can interact with ghosts regularly are rare. Second, Cupid can only help those with pure intentions. You must love Zach, and he must love you. Cupid doesn't trick anyone. No shenanigans. No shenanigans. Chloe had zero doubts about the fortitude of her and Zach's love. She only wanted to ensure they actually tied the knot this time. Third, you need to have the mental fortitude to handle a ghost in your life for 7 days. No mental breakdowns. If you can't handle Cupid's presence, he'll disappear, and so will any help he can provide. Help? Yes. And this is important to remember. Cupid can't affect his surroundings, not beyond a few supernatural gusts of wind or flickering lights. But he can see glimpses of the future and guide you to help make your happy day come true. Chloe felt her skepticism rising. At least skepticism about ghosts wasn't one of Rose's rules. Chloe locked a congenial smile in place as she contemplated the ludicrousness of taking a potion to see a ghost who'd supposedly help ensure her wedding would take place. For real this time. Rose stood, retrieved something from beneath her cash register counter, and returned to Chloe. The strange, elegant woman set a box, ornately decorated in tiny gems and shaped like a miniature treasure chest, on the table beside Chloe's teacup. Rose withdrew a key from around her neck and unlocked the chest. She retrieved a small pink vial from the velvet cushion within the box. Well, Rose is nothing if not dramatic, Chloe thought. She accepted the vial. How much does it cost? Rose gave her a pitying look. For a friend of the family with your bad luck, nothing. I only ask that, if you decide not to use it before your wedding day, please return it to me. Chloe, now standing, stared down at the vial in her hand. KK, thank you for this, and for taking the time to meet with me. KK? Rose asked. It's my slang for okay. Ah. Rose led her to the door. If you have any questions, you know where to reach me. If this worked, Chloe could tell Zach, and they'd both have a good laugh. If it didn't work, she might never admit she'd visited a mystic for help, and walked away with a mysterious potion in hand. After the young woman left, Cupid sat down in the chair Chloe had occupied. He leaned back, crossed his legs, and looked at her partially consumed cup of tea. Rose sipped her own tea and acknowledged his presence with a slight nod of her head. Do you think she'll drink it? Cupid asked. Rose's eyes twinkled through her heavy makeup. I'm not sure. She definitely doesn't believe in the paranormal. But then they never do. However, she might be desperate enough to try something. Cupid strummed his fingers on his blue jeans. You've given me an easy one. A soft pitch, as Americans call it. She's already in love and already has a wedding date. All I have to do is a little hand-holding for a few days. Is that what you see in her future? No, I haven't looked. There's no point in bothering to look unless she actually asks for my help by drinking the potion. Well, it's hard to know what the future holds, since her repeated efforts to be married have been met with many surprises. If she faces some other disasters with this proximity to her wedding, maybe she needn't bother to try.
But maybe she should,
Rose countered calmly.
And she needs a little nudge from a ghost.
We'll see what she decides. Play it safe or into the rabbit hole. So that's where we're at. 5 little days away from finally getting married, Zach said. The gray-haired woman in the seat beside him smiled sweetly.
Quite a story. I do hope it works out for the two of you this time.
Zach's plane touched down at the San Francisco airport. As it taxied, he sent a quick text to Chloe. Landed. Be home at 8. Nothing can go wrong, he told the woman. We're keeping the wedding local. My fiancé is at home. The plane just landed. The June weather is perfect right now. Everything is set. Chloe texted back immediately. KK. He knew she was worried about his travel plans, flying to Dallas and back home so close to the wedding. And rightly so. Their 3rd attempt at a wedding was approaching. They'd made a pact to have no travel plans or strenuous activity the week before the wedding. For him, that meant being cognizant of his work schedule. For her, that meant no rigorous sparring with clients. Zach enjoyed his job in cybersecurity, but it often meant traveling to the places where his company had been hired. Not everything could be set up remotely when it came to securing data. Chloe ran her own gym, where she taught spin bike, yoga, and taekwondo classes. When Zach had met her, she was teaching a self-defense class. Admittedly, at that first encounter, he hadn't known she was a smart, funny entrepreneur. He'd first noticed her compact body, brunette curls, and dimpled cheeks. She had an adorable smile that crinkled her nose and squinted her eyes. Zach reached ground transportation and withdrew his phone to connect with a rideshare. He'd have an hour ride through traffic, so he hoped he'd be able to get more work done on the trip home.
Zachary Sumner, come with us. Quietly.
2 men flanked him on either side. What?
We have Chloe, and you need to come with us if you want her to stay safe.
Chloe? Zach's heartbeat doubled as he tried to process the threat around him. Even as they spoke, the large men in black fatigues were already leading him towards a parked green Jeep. Were they police? Military? Who are you? I need to see some identification, Zach demanded.
Get in and don't make a scene.
They had no identifying logos on their clothing. Their darting eyes looked menacing, and they stunk of sweat and cigarettes. Chloe? Zach's voice constricted, even as his mind raced with the hostage training he'd had. The training videos he'd watched did nothing to mimic real danger when everything was moving too fast. But he couldn't let himself be taken. Catastrophic data breaches could be achieved if someone forced him to share the secrets he knew. When they reached the vehicle, Zach whirled. Now wait a damn minute. I want to see Chloe right now. He couldn't fight 2 kidnappers, but he could make a public scene. Large arms from inside the vehicle wrapped around him, pulling him into the fold. A noxious-smelling rag, presumably chloroform, closed over his mouth, followed by darkness. Chloe. He'd never forgive himself if anything happened to her. Chapter 2. Chloe finished a long day of exercise classes. She showered before dressing in comfy cotton pants with a matching gray shirt and fluffy pink slippers. An advantage to being a fitness instructor was always wearing comfortable clothes. The exception was when she needed to pitch a gym membership package to a company for their employees. Getting companies to agree to group rates was part of her specialty. She had the pep, as Zach called it. And once people were inside her facility, she could motivate them. The challenge was keeping them coming back. People led busy lives and struggled to carve out time for wellness, even when they had a group discount and 24-hour access. She blended a kale smoothie and added protein supplements. She practiced everything she advocated with her clients. Low carb, no fake sugar, lots of water and tea. Chloe's gaze fell on the pink vial on the kitchen counter as she drank her health shake. She checked her watch. Zach would be home in 30 minutes. Everything would be fine. She didn't need hocus-pocus potions. Her phone rang. She jumped, lunged for it, thinking it was Zach, and knocked over her drink. Thick green liquid spread across the counter. "Dang it!" She answered the phone and put it on speaker as she fetched a towel.
"Hi, Chloe. How are you?"
"Hi, Emma." Not Zach. Chloe tried to conceal the disappointment from her friend.
"My aunt said you visited her this morning."
"No client mystic privilege, I see," Chloe teased.
"She didn't tell me what she offered you. Did you do whatever it was she advised?"
Chloe mopped up her dinner, picking up the pink vial and cleaning smoothie off it. "No."
"What? Why not?"
"It's a potion. I don't know if it's safe or not. It has belladonna in it."
"So you might get sleepy. I'm telling you, Rose has helped a lot of people. And not just lovers."
"I don't know. I feel silly about the whole thing."
"Do it. It can't hurt. Oh, my mom's calling. Gotta go. And please, don't leave your maid of honor hanging a third time. Drink, for good luck."
Emma clicked off. Chloe finished cleaning and drank what was left of her shake, all the while staring at that little pink bottle. The clock on her mantel in the nearby living room ticked by as the weight of silence hung in the room between her and the potion. When she checked the time again, she frowned. Zach was 15 minutes late. She looked at her phone. No calls or text messages. He could be in traffic. Were it not for their track record close to their wedding day, she wouldn't worry at all. She phoned Zach, but the call went instantly to voicemail. The pink bottle stared at her. At last, she came to a decision. Worst-case scenario was nothing supernatural happened, and the belladonna soothed her worry. She plucked it off the counter, pulled off the cork top, and downed the potion. After consuming the flavorful drink, she stopped to consider that Rose hadn't given specific instructions. On an empty stomach or with food? In the morning or at night? Maybe it didn't matter. She waited a moment with bated breath. When nothing happened, she doubled over laughing at herself. "I'm so ridiculous!" She wiped at her eyes. Blinking, she stared as a translucent figure shimmered into appearance before her. "Hello, Chloe." Chloe stumbled back, regrouped, and did a roundhouse kick, straight through the figure. "Good reflexes," he said. You're a ghost." "I am the ghost, Cupid, as requested." The intruder was a young man, perhaps 20, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt with a cartoon of a plump red heart with an arrow through it. His skin appeared to be a smooth porcelain, without a wrinkle or blemish. No wonder he was sometimes depicted as a baby. This isn't possible. Her heart raced as she looked around the kitchen for some type of planted projector. "Your eyes don't deceive you." Chloe circled Cupid in a careful, defensive pose. Despite teaching Taekwondo, she'd only ever been in one fight where she'd had to defend Emma from a groping drunk at a dance hall. "You're trespassing," she said. "You invited me when you drank the potion." Chloe swiped a hand into the translucent figure, watching it go straight through Cupid. The ghost yawned. "I can do this all night. In fact, I can do this for eternity. You, however, are on a deadline, if I'm not mistaken." Chloe stopped circling Cupid as she glanced at the clock. Zach was over an hour late now. "I want to make sure my wedding happens without any more disasters." "Hitched without a hitch. Yes, I heard your entire conversation with Rose. She's such a gem. Don't gape at me. Just because you couldn't see me up until 5 minutes ago doesn't mean I don't exist. In the supernatural sense of the word, of course." Chloe checked her phone again. No call or text from Zach. "So, can you help me?" Her voice had an edge of pleading desperation. "Because I can see parts of the present that others cannot, and some of the future, I have been able to unite many couples over the centuries. Usually it's the little things. Flowers, a perfectly timed gift, making impeccable travel plans. His eyes sparkled. What do you get out of it? Comfort, satisfaction, and pleasure in knowing I've united lovers. And it passes the time. So you're here with me for the next 7 days? She asked. 7 days, or until I am no longer wanted or needed. I never overstay my welcome. Chloe paced her kitchen, trying to process how she was having a conversation with a ghost. Or perhaps Rose's concoction was a powerful hallucinogenic. KK, I need to test this. Cupid rolled his eyes. Tell me exactly what Emma is doing right now, Chloe said. Closing his eyes, Cupid pinched the bridge of his nose. Your friend Emma is on her way to the movie theater with Nick to see the latest superhero blockbuster. What? Chloe snatched up her phone and speed-dialed her friend. Emma answered. Are you with Nick? Chloe demanded. How did you know? I thought we decided he was a jerk and you weren't going to give him a second chance. I changed my mind, Emma said. By taking him to the movie you and I were going to see together? I'm sorry, you've been tied up with wedding plans. Wait, how did you... Never mind. Enjoy the show, but don't trust Nick. Wait, Chloe. But Chloe was already disconnecting the call. She set down the phone as she leaned on the counter and closed her eyes to stop the room from spinning. KK, she could do this. There was no harm in maximizing her chances of wedding success through utilization of this paranormal encounter to its fullest extent. Her eyes fluttered open, and she scrutinized Cupid's appearance. No bow? No wings? He crossed his arms. Nor am I a god, as Roman and Greek mythology would have you believe. I used to carry arrows and a torch, symbols of how love wounds and inflames the heart. But I modernized. He gestured at the cartoon heart with an arrow through it on his T-shirt. I discovered that people of the 21st century don't trust young men in togas. KK, Cupid, can you tell me where Zach is? Are you saying you're a believer? I'm saying I'm less of a skeptic. I like honesty. Give me a moment. He closed his eyes again. His face went lax before his brows knitted in together and his lips dropped into a frown. No, this makes no sense. What is it? What's wrong? Wait, give me some context clues right now. Where should your fiancé be? Driving home from the airport? He usually takes a rideshare. Cupid's brow furrowed deeper. So there's no reason he'd be tied to a chair in a dark room? Chloe gasped as she went rigid with fear. No! What are you seeing? You'll have to excuse me for a moment. I need to explore Zach's surroundings to learn more. With that, Cupid vanished. Zach woke to the obnoxious odor of what he assumed was smelling salts. He recoiled, only to feel his arms bound to a chair. He rolled his neck to loosen an ache as his eyes adjusted to a small, dark room with a single ceiling light and heavy curtains over the windows. He'd been dreaming of Chloe, a vivid reenactment of when they'd first met. Wake up, a gruff voice demanded. The awful sulfur smell filled his nostrils again. His eyes focused on a man in a ski mask. Another masked villain was a few steps behind him. Were the masks necessary? He'd already seen their faces at the airport. Chloe, where's my fiancé? Alive. For now. What was the accent? German, perhaps. Was he doing business with any German companies? Not recently. We need your cooperation, Mr. Sumner, to maintain her safety. Cooperation with what? Backdoor access to True Health's medical records. You were the cybersecurity specialist on their team. You helped set up their system. Why do you want access? Those are people's health records. But Zach knew the answer. He'd heard the rumors in the tech world that a health conglomerate's database had been hacked. Those infiltrating had held the access to information for ransom, threatening to leak personal health information electronically, globally. Rather than face public disgrace, loss of clients and investors, and ultimate bankruptcy, the company had paid the ransom money to have the data breach sealed by the very perpetrators who'd opened it. Your cooperation, Mr. Summer.
Let me speak to Chloe. I want to know she's safe.
The man reared back and punched Zach in the jaw. Pain exploded through his face as a taste of blood filled his mouth. Lights and stars swam before his eyes. Hey, the other man snapped. Not the face, and not the hands. We can't risk damaging his sight or his ability to type. This other masked man was dressed in slacks, a button-down shirt, and loafers. Zach couldn't place the men. He certainly had never met them before. Then why didn't we grab the woman from the start? This guy isn't going to cooperate without coercion, the brute complained. Through the pain, Zach concentrated on their words. So they didn't have Chloe. Had they lied to get Zach to comply? We did. Well, we planned to pick up Mr. Summer's fiancée at their home, while we picked up Mr. Summer from the airport. Unfortunately, those men were stuck in traffic, but they should have her any moment. She'll be here soon. Loafers turned towards Zach. In the meantime, I'll try to appeal to Mr. Sumner's financial tastes. If you can't be bribed, we'll see how much you value your betrothed. Zach's stomach sickened. He would cave if they produced Chloe. He knew he would. Whatever they wanted. Code written for access to the health records, build a platform to export data, build a website to post the information for their ransom scheme. Any of it in exchange for Chloe unharmed. But they didn't have her in custody yet, and that gave him a glimmer of hope. She was a petite 5'5", all slender muscles from endless days of teaching exercise classes. She also knew Taekwondo. These men had her beat by size, but maybe not skill. And certainly not spunk. Except she'd be home alone right now, and the kidnappers probably had weapons. There was another enormous problem. Chloe loved Zach. If the two men picking her up told her to come or harm would befall her fiancé, she'd accompany them without hesitation. So Zach figured he had maybe a few hours to devise a way for both of them to escape. Chapter 3. Chloe paced her kitchen, waiting for Cupid to return. Waiting for a ghost. She shook her head in disbelief. 7 days. She only needed him for 5, just to make sure the wedding happened. She wasn't crazy. She was desperate. Desperate times, desperate measures, and all that. Cupid reappeared, looking distraught. "What's wrong?" Her heart thudded with worry. "Zach has been kidnapped." "Kidnapped? I don't understand. How could he be kidnapped?" "There are a group of international thieves who want his cybersecurity skills to hack True Health's data, so they can threaten to publicly release patient information if the health system doesn't pay a ransom." Chloe clasped her hands to her mouth. Zach had said something like this was a possibility in his line of work. There were protocols. She was supposed to go to the police. Chloe raced upstairs and began packing. Per protocol, she had to leave the house and not return until it was safe. She needed at least an overnight bag. Cupid watched her frantic motions. "I was going to tell you to pack and leave, but it seems you're already aware." "Aware? Aware of what?" Her voice was breathless from fear and exertion. "The thieves intend to kidnap you next, to use you as leverage to make Zach comply." Chloe stuffed jeans and shirts into a bag. "Is he hurt?" "No, don't tell me. He's alive. That's all that matters." She dumped toiletries in the bag. Still in the bathroom, she put on her work clothes she'd set aside for the following day. Pausing, and without making eye contact, she asked again, "Is he hurt?"
Just scratches and bruises.
Chloe sniffed as she zipped her bag shut. She lugged it to the kitchen, where she filled a plastic bottle with tap water. I have to go to the police. Cupid scratched his head, not ruffling his perfectly waved crop of hair.
This is all a bit beyond my purview.
I can't go to the police. Eyes wide with realization, she turned to look at the ghost. Through the ghost. I have no proof he's been kidnapped. I can't tell them a ghost told me. And even though the 24 hours missing rule is actually a myth, Zach is only late by over an hour. No one will believe me. And I can't risk his safety by waiting.
Cupid shuffled his feet. I'm really not qualified to help with this sort of thing.
Chloe snatched her keys, phone and charger, before heading to her car, her mind racing. Zach, kidnapped. She loaded her bag in the back seat of her Prius and turned to Cupid. Are you coming?
I think Rose should find you the ghost of a former police detective or FBI agent or something. I'm the ghost of love and desire, not kidnapping.
Oh, no, you don't. You're not backing out on me. I've got you for 7 days. I don't have time to find another ghost. You agreed to help make my wedding happen, and this is part of it. Hop in, or whatever it is ghosts do. Chloe climbed in the driver's seat, closed the door, and buckled in. Cupid appeared in the passenger seat.
Are you always this commanding?
Instructing, she corrected him. I'm a teacher, so I'm good at instructing. She pulled out of the driveway. Where to?
What do you mean?
Where is Zach being held?
You're going after him?
Cupid gaped at her. Yes.
In your pink yoga clothes?
Yes. He crossed his arms.
You and what army?
Why do you say that? How many are there?
4, and 1 of you.
But I have you.
Take a left here. He waved his hand. But what if they have guns?
We'll need a way to sneak in and sneak out, she replied.
A spy ghost.
What if we find you a former spy? Buck up, Cupid. We're on the clock. Give me the layout of where Zach's being kept. Chloe tapped her steering wheel while they sat in traffic on Highway 92, on the bridge outside Palo Alto. How'd you become a ghost? She asked.
Betrayed love. A broken heart. There's a medical term for it in modern times. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. When an emotionally traumatic event causes heart failure. It's not usually fatal these days. It's also uncommon in men. But then I am a hopeless romantic.
I'm sorry about your heart.
Ah, that was a long time ago. And look at me now. I'm famous, and I help people find love. No piercing arrows involved in the literal sense.
And you seek nothing in return? She asked. The conversation helped distract her from her worry over Zach. Cupid shrugged.
I'm a ghost. I can't do anything with material items. I suppose if I were mean-spirited, I could make people leap through hurdles before I helped them, but that's not what love is about.
How can you help find love? Is it so predictable?
I can glimpse the future. See if 2 people fall in love. But, disclaimer alert, it's up to them to maintain it.
Have you ever had a request like mine?
Kidnapping? No.
Chloe chuckled. No, I meant 2 people who love each other but can't seem to tie the knot.
Twice. One was a man who needed help with the right proposal because his attempts were thwarted by fate. Another was a runaway bride, and there was no chasing her. I can't always give a happily ever after.
His voice trailed at the last sentence. Chloe suspected Cupid was partially referring to a less than optimistic outlook on her situation with Zach. She'd fix that. She'd show him how they were meant to be together, and the kidnappers were not insurmountable obstacles. Zach and I met at a self-defense course.
Oh? What motivated you to take such a class?
I was the instructor.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so we're in my gym, and everyone is dressed in workout clothes, ready to get physical. I try to weave the lecture portions in with hands-on demonstrations. After all, everyone's tired after a long day of work. There are a dozen things they'd rather be doing, so part of my job is to keep the class interesting. Anyway, I notice a man. The only man. Zach? This guy has a pretty good build, right? Defined arms, flat abs, tall, dark, handsome. All that and a bowl of whipped cream. A bowl of... So, I'm thinking to myself, he's built like that, and not wearing a ring, while taking a class statistically known to be predominantly filled with women. There's only one reason he's here.
There is?
To pick up women, Chloe explained. Chloe could envision the event like it happened yesterday as she told Cupid the story. Each person stood on their respective mats, attentive and limber. She'd already covered a few basic lessons. Know your surroundings, don't be distracted, and protect your space. Gentlemen in the back? She asked. He waved. Can you volunteer for us? He joined Chloe at the front of the room with a surprisingly tentative smile when she'd expected him to eat up the attention. Your name?
Zach Sumner.
Chloe addressed the group. Zach is going to be our stand-in demo. She leaned toward Zach. You signed the waiver at the beginning, right? The class laughed. I'm just kidding, she chuckled. She leaned closer, dropping her voice to a whisper. Only half kidding. His cheeks flushed. Your key attack areas, she announced, circling Zach, are the eyes, throat, and groin. Zach's Adam's apple bobbed in a swallow. Let's demonstrate that. She took a stance with her back to Zach and one side facing the students. You grab me from behind, and let's say in this situation we're in a parking garage, so you don't want me to scream. Your hand goes over my mouth. He wrapped one hand around her in a mock attack, where he was 2 inches from actually touching her. His hand hovered in front of her mouth. Good-looking, shy, and a gentleman. Maybe she shouldn't have picked on him. I can't give you one formula to say, if you're grabbed from behind, do this. The reason is that where you're grabbed and where your attacker's center of balance is will determine your reaction. So we need to go through each scenario. In this one, his hand is over your mouth, like Zach's demonstrating, which means he's going to be pulling you back against him. Don't fight it. You're not stronger than him, so you'll waste energy and probably get hurt in the process. You can't reach his neck or groin if he's pressed against you, but you can reach his eyes, several people said. Yes. So, as he pulls your weight back, Chloe leaned back, even though Zach seemed too terrified to move and play the part of attacker. You can shoot your fist, thumb pointed towards his eye, towards your attacker's face. You might not hit his eye, and that's okay. Zach, when you see my fist and thumb coming toward your face, what do you want to do?
Back away, duck, or spin away.
Exactly. Show me. As she bent her arm at the elbow and brought her thumb jerking towards his eye, he took a step back and twisted slightly. Good. Pause right there. Now, class. Maybe you hit him in the face or eye, and now he's standing like this. Or maybe he dodged, and now you have an opening to his groin. Yes. Now it can be a chop with the same arm or a grab, squeeze, and pull down. She took him through several other demonstrations without them ever touching each other, as Zach dutifully played the role of the attacker while simultaneously not comfortable with the idea of attacking. She'd expected him to work the crowd a little bit, but he was surprisingly reserved. Had she misjudged his intentions? When they finished, she asked everyone to give him a round of applause before dismissing the class. As students packed their belongings and filed out, she approached Zach. What brings you to a self-defense class?
I was mugged. I'm not so upset about the money, but it felt like such a violation of my humanity. I didn't like feeling helpless.
You don't look helpless. She caught herself looking, really looking, for the first time at his trim physique. She started to wish he had touched her during the demonstration, but quickly dismissed the thought.
Having a good weight and cardiovascular routine doesn't mean I know how to defend myself.
True, and it takes courage to both realize that and come to a class like this. He grinned.
I didn't know I'd be the only guy.
I hope you'll come back. I promise not to put you on the spot like that again.
I don't mind being part of a demonstration. I just didn't want to be the violent offender.
KK, next time we'll reverse roles and see how much you remember from tonight's lessons.
Was it love at first sight? Cupid asked as Chloe drove.
No. Is that really a thing? I can see it with shoes, but people?
It can be. It doesn't replace the work needed to remain together.
Duh. Chloe went to nudge Cupid's arm with her elbow, but it went right through him. She threw her head back and laughed, part humor at her bizarre situation and part nerves at driving into the unknown. Chapter 4. Zach sat alone in the dark room, thinking about his future wife. He recalled the unconventional start to his and Chloe's relationship. It had been perfect. Just perfect. It fit Chloe and her unconventional personality. He'd started taking self-defense classes not only because he'd been mugged, a frightening and infuriating moment where he'd frozen and given the mugger what he'd wanted without even considering putting up a fight, but also because Zach had heard rumors in the cybersecurity world about thieves not having their own hackers, and so kidnapping people to do their bidding. Someone with Zach's computer skills could be an asset to someone with dubious intentions. The second night he returned to self-defense class, Chloe showed students how to free themselves from several different holds, with the attacker standing behind them. But she didn't once call on him to be the victim, as she'd said she would do. Instead, she rotated through different women in the group. He'd learned a lot, but he was a little disappointed she hadn't used him for one of her demos again. He lingered after the lesson to ask Chloe about the change of plans, waiting in the line of women who talked with her. He watched this social butterfly answer questions from defense to offensive fighting to health and nutrition. Her light and bubbly personality was in contrast to the depth of knowledge she possessed about overall personal wellness. By the time he reached the front of the line, he'd forgotten what he'd originally planned to discuss.
So, magnesium for leg cramps?
He asked, having overheard the last several conversations. Yeah, you can get it through leafy vegetables, fruits, and nuts. Or my favorite, dark chocolate. But sometimes you can take a supplement. He made a mental note to pick up magnesium next time he was grocery shopping. He seemed to cramp on heavier workout days, and a banana wasn't cutting it.
Cool. How'd you get into fitness?
I could claim it was my really cool older sister who's a doctor, but it probably was the crush I had on my high school gym teacher. Zach chuckled. He'd later learn that Chloe not only owned the gym he was standing in, but 3 others around town. Wellness instructor, Taekwondo first-degree black belt, and entrepreneur. She bit her lip. Look, I know I said we'd swap roles in the demo today, and then I benched you, but I felt bad putting you on the spot last time.
I didn't mind.
He picked up his gym bag and slung it over his shoulder.
I'll be here next time, if you need a victim.
She tilted her head to one side and grinned. Zach left before his flirtatious tone could sink in and the moment turn awkward. He didn't look back as he left. He didn't want to know if her grin had widened or slipped into a frown. He'd find out next week, and by that time, he'd work up the courage to ask her out.
Are you always this energetic, or only when your fiancé's in trouble?
Cupid asked. Always, Chloe answered without hesitation as she tapped her fingers on the steering wheel. I learned the word exhausting at a young age because my parents used it to describe me to other parents. We love little Chloe, but she's exhausting. And they'd draw it out as if it had 6 syllables. Don't get me wrong, they love me. But I was a late-in-life surprise baby, so my energy level combined with older parents was hard on them. Of course, now that I'm 33, independent, and running my own business, they can sit back and enjoy. I'm referred to as jubilant rather than exhausting. Cupid chuckled.
And what about Zach? Does he enjoy this energy?
I assume so. After all, he still wants to marry me. He's 3 years younger than me, so maybe that's why he doesn't find me exhausting.
Indeed. He's 3 years younger than you.
Yeah. We didn't know about it until after our first date, but I already liked him by then. Besides, women live longer than men. Maybe we all ought to be picking younger men.
Sounds like you've got it all figured out.
She narrowed her eyes at him. Are you mocking me? He raised his hands, as if in self-defense.
Not at all. I'm enjoying your jubilance. It's very refreshing. This entire experience is quite different from the longing to love whilst languishing individuals who call on me and imagine that love will fix all their problems.
Well, this time we're fixing love, rather than it fixing us.
Bending it to your will,
Cupid mused. You bet your heart-tipped arrow. Zach and I tried playing love's game, peaceful wedding planning and anticipating our union. Now I'm taking the bull by the horns.
If anyone has the needed tenacity, I believe you, Chloe, are that person.
As Chloe took I-580 West, she passed a billboard for the latest action movie with the hero looking buff and ready to fight. She recalled another class Zach had attended. She'd dressed one of her personal fitness instructors in a padded suit and had the students form a line. One by one, they'd moved through the line, made a punch or kick into the padding, and walked to the back of the line to do it again. We're all taught at a young age, no hitting, no biting, no scratching, no throwing things. When you're in a situation with someone who means you harm, those rules go out the window. You do what you need to do to get free and get safe. This exercise is to get you less uncomfortable with striking someone, so that if a crucial moment to your survival arises, you don't hesitate because you're a decent person programmed since childhood to play nice in the sandbox. Defending yourself doesn't make you a bully or a violent person. Chloe broke into the line. A redhead stood at the front. Barbara, Chloe recalled her name. Now, you're going to kick Rick between the legs. What? I assure you, he's well padded. We've been doing this routine for 5 years.
Okay.
Barbara took a ready stance, but didn't kick. Chloe addressed the class. The good person in you would never do that to a man. The woman, or man, defending herself, or himself, might have to. Chloe turned back to Barbara. Go ahead. Barbara kicked. Rick didn't flinch. Some of the other women gasped, and others chuckled. But the momentum picked back up, and all of the women took their turn. Some shy, and some with a bit of telling aggression. Zach stood at the front of the line.
Maybe I'll skip my turn.
Because you're a guy? Chloe asked.
Yeah, it doesn't seem right.
He eyed Rick warily. Ever seen Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? Guys kick other guys when they need to. Remember, your actions are for self-defense.
Since we're talking movies, you know Casino Royale, the James Bond movie? I'm picturing that awful torture scene. I was physically ill watching that.
Look at Rick. He's fine. 10 kicks later.
And he looks like a decent guy. Probably wouldn't hurt a stray dog.
KK. She took a step back from Zach. The purpose of the exercise was to push people out of their comfort zone, but Chloe wouldn't push too far. Next up? The lesson continued. At the end, Chloe had everyone relax on their mats and deep breathe. When the class was dismissed, Zach approached.
Great class.
Thanks. I feel like I put you on the spot again.
We're good,
he smiled.
Would you be interested in grabbing a bite to eat?
KK, I'm going with a group of friends to Fuki Sushi. Do you want to join us? Noticing the part startled, part disappointed expression on his face, Chloe realized Zach had been referring to a date. Oh, you mean just you and me?
Well, a group is fine too. In fact, with you being a black belt, maybe a group would be safer for me to start with.
She chuckled, since he was making reference to one of the safety rules she'd first covered in class, getting to know someone before dating them alone. Zach had joined her that night with her friends and proved himself very amicable. 3 days later, they went on a real date. Zach twisted his wrist against his restraints. How much time had passed? It was hard to gauge, but he hadn't made much progress in his escape plan. His kidnappers still hadn't produced Chloe. He took that as a good sign. He thought of the first date he and Chloe had gone on. She didn't want a long, drawn-out meal. so he'd opted to take her to Red Java's house. After that, they'd strolled along the Embarcadero strip of piers. "Tell me more about cybersecurity. What do you do, exactly?" she asked. He took a chance and reached for her hand. They walked side by side as he felt the warmth from her slender fingers. Her body language remained relaxed, and he wondered if she felt the same zinging chemistry at their touch as he did.
Cybersecurity is all about protecting online data from being compromised. I safeguard files and networks and install firewalls. Then I show medical centers how to create security plans and monitor for internal and external threats.
Very cool. Sounds pretty intense, she said.
Not really. It's a lot of code. Long hours at a desk.
Oh, you could get one of those hinged desks so you can alternate sitting and standing.
I might look into that. I have this cushioned chair that's supposed to keep my spine in alignment, he said.
You don't sound convinced. I could show you some stretches you could do at work during your breaks. The idea of Chloe stretching had Zach forgetting the discomfort of lower back pain.
You own gyms. You're funny and energetic. I have to ask, you are actually single, right?
She laughed. Yes, I'm single. Let's see. Bobby said I was too high energy. Justin got mad at my suggestions for healthier eating. I mean, the guy was a walking junk food munching machine. He may have been built like Chris Hemsworth, but it's going to eventually catch up to him. And most recently, Antonio didn't want a woman who could beat him in a fight.
Was he planning on fighting you?
No, but when he learned I was a black belt, he excused himself from the relationship. Oh, this is way more information than I should be sharing on a first date. Which reminds me, Jim said I shared too much. She started to tug her hand back, but Zach didn't let go.
I like it. I deal with data. You're giving me a data download. Besides, cybersecurity is all about protecting secrets, so I like being with someone who isn't secretive. Also, I like health and high energy. As for beating me in a fight, I'd spar with you anytime, and enjoy watching you land me on my backside over and over and over.
She laughed, tucking a strand of dark brown hair behind her ears. He saw a faint blush of her cheeks by the light of the lanterns lining the dock. She looked up at him, blue eyes vibrant from her rosy cheeks.
Where can I take you on date number 2?
Chloe stopped and leaned on the railing. Zach followed her gaze out over the ocean. The salty breeze blew through his hair as gulls flew low, looking for their next snack. The zone.
The laser tag place?
He asked. My niece's birthday party is there on Saturday, and the rest of my calendar is full until the following week. And I don't want to wait that long to see you again.
Laser tag it is.
Chloe bit her lip. It'll be a rambunctious bunch of 12-year-olds cracked out on pizza and soda.
It'll be fun.
Zach had had so much fun, especially watching Chloe fully embrace the role of warrior ant. With her grace and agility, no one got a shot on her, while Zach spent most of his time with his lights alarming that he'd been hit. Chapter 5.
Are you okay?
Cupid looked at Chloe, who'd fallen uncharacteristically silent. The night was taking unexpected turns for him, but the ordeal was much harder for her. The only fight I've ever been in was over before it started. Emma and I were at a dance club. She was dancing her heart out, and I was drowning in sorrow over missing Hawaii. Zach was out of town on business. Anyway, so this chunky guy with some 1990s boy band hair waving in the breeze gets all gropey.
Gropey?
Cupid asked. Yes, it's totally a word, and if it isn't, it should be. So, I'm already in a bad mood with 2 drinks on board.
I honestly can't picture you in a bad mood,
he mused. She was so relentlessly chipper, but she also had a protective streak, evidenced by her rush to rescue Zach, and now this story, which sounded like she was going to rescue Emma. Chloe gave her most severe scowl, but Cupid only laughed.
Do go on,
he said. I stormed onto the dance floor and got in his face.
My friend obviously doesn't like your frisky fingers, buddy, so get it under control. Gropey tells me to mind my own business, while Emma gets sheepish. It's okay, Chloe, let's just go. But I'm not about to let the situation diffuse because it's not okay. Say you're sorry, I tell Gropey. He smirks and replies back with,
You're just jealous.
Cupid listened with captured interest to Chloe's retelling of the events and the way she'd changed her tone from Gropey's lazy, deep slur to Emma's high-pitched damsel in distress. Lay a hand on me, and you'll find out just how not jealous I am. He moves to push me away with one hand because, let's be honest, I was crowding him and picking a fight. I intercept his hand, twist his wrist, and bring him to his knees. Emma gasps, and by this time, the dancers are turning into gawkers. Say you're sorry, I tell him again.
I'm sorry,
he says. Though that's the PG version of what he actually said. As we left, he called me crazy, but as you can see, the entire event unfolded in a completely rational way.
Completely rational,
Cupid agreed with a grin. When Chloe fell silent again, Cupid stared out the car window at the dark summer sky, speckled with stars. What had Rose gotten him into? Of course, she had no idea Chloe's situation would become so dangerous. He was way out of his depth here. He felt the weight of everything in the couple's life riding on his ghostly skills. Normally, if he didn't succeed, two people didn't end up together. Such an outcome could be blamed on the intricacies of finicky love. In Chloe's and Zach's case, a failure on Cupid's part could result in one or both of them harmed, or worse. Chloe's spunk, honesty, energy, and obvious love for Zach had instantly endeared her to Cupid. The ancient ghost desperately wanted to give her the outcome she desired and seemed to deserve. Much of Cupid's worry came from her and Cupid's heavy reliance on his ability to see the future. The future held thousands of possibilities, each dependent on a chain reaction. They could misstep anywhere along the way and alter the outcome they had hoped and planned for. Cupid silently vowed to do his best for both Chloe and Zach. Zach tried to gauge how much time had passed when his captors came back into his room. 2 hours, perhaps? He hadn't succeeded in loosening his bonds. Mostly, he was sore and bleeding now. Is your fiancée sleeping around? Brute asked.
No.
She's not at your home. Where else would she be at night? A friend's house?
You think I'm going to make this easier for you?
Zach laced his voice with venom, even as he felt rising hope that they wouldn't snare Chloe. She could be at any number of places. Emma's house, the movies, her parents' house. She was probably frantic with worry with the wedding so close and then him not home on time. It was odd she wasn't at home waiting for him, but since he hadn't arrived, she could be out looking for him. But she'd never find him. That was a good thing. He didn't want her anywhere near these monsters. Loafers pulled out his phone and began typing with his thumbs. Actually, you are going to help us. If she isn't cheating on you, then she'll respond to a little SOS text message.
What?
We obtained both your mobile numbers weeks ago. Cloning phones is far easier than hacking a multi-layered security system.
No,
Zach yelled. If they had cloned his phone, then the text message Loafers was writing to Chloe would appear to come from Zach's phone. The man left the room, chuckling and typing. Brute snickered as he followed his partner in crime. Zach tilted his head back, cursing. He had to escape. His ropes hadn't loosened enough to free his hands. When they were free, he had only one exit from the room and no idea the layout of the house. There were at least 2 kidnappers, both larger than him, and his only weapon was the chair he sat on. He hadn't seen any guns yet, but that didn't mean they weren't armed. 5 days until their wedding. 5 days. All he wanted to do was live a blissful life with his effervescent wife, Chloe. Were they destined not to achieve a union? He recalled their last failed attempt. They'd been packed and ready to fly to the mountains. That night,
Chloe had complained about an upset stomach. The next morning, she looked pale.
Honey, maybe we should get you checked out,
Zach suggested. I'm okay. She loaded her carry-on into the car. Probably something I ate. It'll pass. He didn't want to argue with her, so he hefted their suitcases into the trunk, watching her try to hide the abdominal pain she obviously felt. On the way to the airport, Chloe gasped and grimaced. This might be bad. Zach never slowed as he changed routes from the airport to the nearest hospital. The ER did CT scans and told them she had appendicitis before she was whisked away to surgery. Zach remembered wiping tears from her eyes as she lay on the gurney.
I'll be right here when you wake up.
While she was in surgery, Zach called her family and canceled the wedding. She went from laparoscopic surgery in the OR to the recovery room to a hospital bed. The surgeon told Zach that if she'd been on a plane with a ruptured appendix, Chloe would have had to have emergent open abdominal surgery. She added, "You probably saved her life." The next day, Zach was by Chloe's side when she woke. Her smile lit his world.
Can I get you anything? Juice? Another pillow?
She took his hand in hers. A rain check on the wedding, I guess. He kissed her hand.
You know I'm devoted to you, even without the legal documentation that declares it. I'll put the ring on right now. I'll get the hospital chaplain to make us official.
Chloe chuckled, but shook her head. I'm not getting married in a hospital after surgery. I probably look hideous.
You're the most beautiful woman I know.
She snorted. Love really is blind. To prove his point, he leaned over and kissed her. The kiss was slow and sensual. When he pulled away and looked into her eyes, he saw that he'd stripped away her sadness, pain, and worry. Wow, she said, a little breathless, and wrapped her arms gently around him. As they continued their drive, Chloe realized she'd spent a lot of time talking about herself. She didn't know much about Cupid, and learning about him would both enhance their relationship and distract her from the current crisis. What's your greatest matchmaking success? She asked him.
Oh, it's hard to pick just one. Princesses to paupers, they're all rewarding. But this isn't my story. I'm learning about you and Zach.
Fine, but when this is over and Zach is safe, I get to hear about the man behind the legend.
We can do that.
Chloe bounced her left leg as she kept her right on the gas pedal. Is Emma okay? Did she make it home from the movies?
One moment. Yes. Nick behaved himself.
Good. How do you do that, anyway? Can you find anyone?
Almost anyone, and it took hundreds of years to get good at it. Not all ghosts can track people.
Cupid's got skills.
Tell me about when Zach proposed.
How do you know I wasn't the one who proposed?
I know, he smiled.
Chloe thought about Zach's proposal. He proposed on the pier. Very romantic. I remember it like it was yesterday. The night was cool, but not cold, and salty air swept past us. We walked to the pier where our first date was. Golden lights were strung along the railing. As we approached, hand in hand, a quartet started playing. Chloe said wistfully. I'll never forget his words as his hands shook, holding the ring in its display box. I think you know a man is committed when he's nervous in the proposal. Anyway, he said, Chloe, you're the most vibrant and vivacious woman I know. You are the supernova in my life. And I'd be the luckiest man to bask in the light of your life for the rest of mine. Goosebumps spread down her arms. Cupid sniffed and turned to look out the window.
Charming.
Are you crying?
No.
You teared up, didn't you?
Maybe.
He dabbed at ghost tears under his eyes.
It was very touching. I'm a romantic, you know. It's why I do what I do. So I can be a part of the special moments in people's lives.
Chloe drove in silence as she thought of when she'd told Emma the same story. Her best friend was a massage therapist. Chloe had first met her when she'd gotten a massage at Emma's day spa. Well, not her spa. Emma hadn't owned the place yet, but that was because Chloe hadn't yet inspired Emma to work for herself and to be her own boss. She kept feeding her referrals from the gym and boosted her business. The day Chloe told Emma about Zach's proposal, Chloe had been face down on the massage table, since Emma had insisted pampering herself was the best way to celebrate the happy news. Chloe grunted from the intense pressure. Shouldn't this be a relaxing Swedish massage to celebrate my engagement? It would be. Emma kneaded the muscles between Chloe's shoulder blade and spine. But you're all knotted up. When was your last massage? I don't know. When was the last time I came to you? Ugh, it feels like my rhomboid's being cycled through a meat grinder. You last came to me 2 years ago for a massage. Are you serious? Has it been 2 years? Emma demanded. I've been busy, Chloe squeaked out the reply, as Emma ran her forearm down her back with such force Chloe thought her rib cage might crack. You need to work more self-care into your routine. She pushed directly on one of the knotted muscles. Chloe felt the pain shoot deep before radiating outward. Are you sure this isn't a manifestation of your frustration that I'm engaged and you're not? Tempting, but no. I really am doing deep tissue for your sake. You'll thank me later. Now, when are we going dress shopping? Chloe's phone chimed, bringing her back to the present. She pulled the car over to the side of the road and yanked the phone from her console. It's from Zach, she told Cupid. She read it aloud. Ran into car trouble. Can you pick me up? It's not from Zach, Cupid said. Chloe rubbed her temple. So, trap? Trap. They need to use you as leverage against Zach. Oh, they're going to get me, and they'll be sorry they did. I have no doubt, he grinned. How do I play this? She wriggled her thumbs as she held the phone, ready to text back. I've no idea. Cupid pointed 2 thumbs at himself. Ghost of love, not hostage negotiations. Right. KK, but can you see the future? Or parts of it? Yes, he answered hesitantly, as though afraid of what she was scheming. But if you play this wrong, they might put additional physical pressure on Zach to comply. Tell me this. Is it better for me to send something like, KK, I'm on my way, which I don't think they're going to believe anyway, because if your rideshare has a breakdown, you just get another rideshare, and none of that explains a 2-hour delay. Or do I creep them out with a different message? Let me look into this. Chloe waited while Cupid sat with eyes closed, channeling whatever supernatural things ghosts channeled. At last, he told her, Make it creepy. The creepier the better. Excellent. With a maniacal grin, Chloe typed her reply. Then she turned to Cupid. I'm going to need a few more pieces of information from you. Chapter 6. Zach was flexing his legs to keep them limber when Brute burst into the room, eyes flashing beneath the ski mask he wore. What the hell does this mean? Zach's eyes adjusted to the light on the screen of the phone as he read the text message. 1, 2, Chloe's gonna get you. Does she know they have you, or is she messing with you? Brute demanded. I don't see how she could know you've abducted me, but she wouldn't direct something like that at me. She hates horror movies. She had nightmares from just the Freddy Krueger movie trailers. Loafers entered the room. Your phone is inactive. No one can trace us here. His phone beeped with an incoming text, and he pulled the phone from his pocket. As Loafers read the message aloud, Zach thought his face went ashen, based on the parts of his face he could see through the eye holes in the mask. He held the phone for the other man to see. 3, 4, you're going to hit the floor? How'd she get your number? Another beep, this time Brute's phone, different from the cloned phone he initially held. 5, 6, bury you in the sticks. Cursing, the men dashed out of the room, slamming the door behind them. Zach sat under the dim light, wondering how this was possible. Part of him hoped Chloe was orchestrating the percolating of fear through the kidnappers, and that she was arranging some type of rescue. Part of him wanted her stowed away, somewhere safe. Chloe burst out laughing as Cupid told her the reaction of Zach's captors. The laughter felt good, though her insides were still churning with intense worry for Zach.
I thought they might wet their britches,
he added. I would have liked to have seen their faces.
Well played, Chloe, well played. You've managed to thoroughly confuse and worry them. You still need to rescue Zach tonight. Look at me.
He shook his head.
I'm helping a woman maneuver a kidnapping. You're a first for me, and that's saying something when you've been around as long as I have.
You might change your M.O. after this and join SWAT.
Certainly not. This is far more adventure and suspense than I want for the next century.
You've got great skills to be anything you want to be.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Huh. I wouldn't have pegged you for a Spider-Man fan.
That quote is from Voltaire, 1793.
Chloe chuckled at herself. Well, I never claimed to have any literary knowledge. Cupid turned to face the road, trying to feign annoyance, but she saw the upturned corners of his mouth in amusement. Onward? Chloe put the car back in gear.
Once more into the breach,
Cupid declared, quoting Shakespeare. They headed north on I-680, into the night, toward Zach. Cupid left Chloe while she drove, and he arrived back at the isolated home where Zach was being held. The cybersecurity expert appeared to be making snail-pace progress on his ropes. Unseen, the ghost walked through the door into the kitchen. He followed the sound of voices of dissension to the front living room. He stepped over cables, running from one wall to a table near a worn, brown sofa. The table held 2 large computer monitors attached to a CPU and a keyboard. Beside the keyboard were a pile of ski masks and 2 handguns, 9mm if he had to guess. And Cupid would have to guess, because he knew nothing about guns. He looked back down at the floor. Ethernet wires. The kidnappers must have taken time and planning to set up this location. 4 men were in the confined space. One lounged on the couch, watching a soccer match on mute. Of the 3 men standing and bickering, one was dressed smartly in a navy suit and loafers. The other 2 were in black fatigues. Cupid picked up the names as he eavesdropped. The well-dressed German was Eric. The large, bulky man was Dolph. And the one dipping snuff was Pork.
We don't have the woman, so we need a new plan,
Dolph said.
The backup plan is we torture the cybersecurity captive. It'll need to be something without much blood loss, and he'll need to still be able to see the screen and type,
Eric explained. Cupid's stomach rolled. This was most definitely not his domain. He was puppy dogs and heart-shaped confetti, not guns and blood.
Don't you have tools?
Pork asked Dolph.
I brought what I needed to rough up his fiancée, who doesn't need consciousness, eyesight, and fingers.
A wave of nausea pummeled through Cupid at the image of something horrible happening to Chloe, but he didn't want Zach to suffer either.
We'll look around the house, see what we can use,
Eric said. Cupid decided to do the same. What could he do to derail their plans, or at least delay them? He scanned the living room, eyes falling on the computer and robust trail of wires. Perfect. Like most ghosts, Cupid could disrupt electrical systems, trip fuses, dim lights, turn televisions to static, drop internet connections, and even shut off power. He plunged both hands into the CPU. With his full concentration and ghostly force, he shut down the system.
What the?
Pork rushed to the table and punched buttons on the keyboard in irritation.
What happened?
Eric demanded.
The system shut down.
I'll restart it. If they don't have a computer or internet, our plan implodes, Dolph said.
I know. I'm working on it. I don't understand.
The disruption was temporary, but Cupid had bought Zack a little time. The ghost may have to return periodically to continue to disrupt the computer and delay their hideous plans for Zack. Cupid returned to Chloe as she drove. Everything okay?
Zack is still unharmed. We need to discuss our rescue plan.
I'm ready. On the drive toward Rio Vista Junction, where Jack was being held, Chloe and Cupid talked through 36 rescue scenarios. They finally found one which didn't end in flaming disaster for Chloe and Zack, but it did involve fireworks. Why is Zack being held at an old house in the middle of nowhere? Chloe asked.
I suppose because it's remote, but still has internet access. Again, ghost of love, not rescue missions.
What can you tell me about the kidnappers?
They all have criminal records. The leader knew someone who'd pulled off a cyber heist, so he thought he'd try one. They'd been stalking your fiancé for months, scheming the kidnapping. They set up the house well in advance. My understanding is that they had planned on taking you and Zack simultaneously from separate locations. Then neither of you could alert the other. But an accident on the bridge caused traffic to back up, which prevented the second team from getting to you before you left.
She smirked. Because you warned me. That shook up their plans.
Yes. Once it became obvious they weren't going to find you to leverage your well-being and make Zack comply with hacking True Health's database, they went into discussions on another plan. His voice turned dismal.
Chloe swallowed.
Hurting Zack.
Cupid scrubbed hands across his face.
I don't understand this kidnapping nonsense. Why wouldn't they just hire someone to hack a back door to the data if they had the money for this elaborate scheme?
Chloe blew out a slow breath. It's complicated. And there's no hacking a back door. A back door is a programmed security flaw. The programmer can access a back door, but people don't hack into it. Zack wouldn't have built that into True Health's system anyway. The kidnappers would have to have a hacker to attempt a security breach. And hacking is a lot more complex than it seems in the movies. Zack has explained it to me before. At Cupid's raised eyebrows, she continued. First, a hacker would have to break through the initial firewall. This only gets him or her as far as the DMZ.
DMZ?
Demilitarized zone. The DMZ consists of health system application, but not sensitive data like patient information. Then there is another firewall between the DMZ and the patient database. Few people would be able to hack both. If they manage to get that far, it's not as though they can just copy-paste the information they want from the server. Cupid nodded in understanding.
They picked Zack because he set up True Health's security.
Right. He knows the layers required to get all the way to the data. He doesn't have to hack anything or use a back door. He can use administrative access and walk right through the front door. He may even be able to suspend the firewall, get to the server, and copy-paste the data. Cupid's face fell.
They argued about how to interrogate him in a way that still kept him lucid and functional enough to navigate the internet.
Are we going to get there before they hurt him?
Yes, I caused delays.
You? What delays did you cause?
You've seen me flicker in and out of your car for the last half hour.
Yes, I thought maybe that was a ghost thing.
I've been intermittently disrupting their internet access. Without having online access, they haven't had a reason to start their interrogation.
You're not a ghost. You're a freaking angel. No wonder people sometimes draw you with wings. Cupid smiled.
I have my moments.
Chloe parked her car and got out for the second stop of the night and the last one before she would reach Zack. She'd first stopped at a convenience store where she bought a pocket knife, lighter, and USB cable. Now, she went inside a shady-looking thrift store where Cupid had divined the store owner would be willing to sell firecrackers outside the June 28th through July 6th law in California. Hi.
She approached the clerk at the counter. "I'm interested in buying black cat flashlights, the 100 pack. The owner, a gangly man with leather skin and thinning hair, turned down the volume on the show he watched on an iPad.
By law, they don't go on sale until June 28th.
I'm not a cop. I'm a cash-paying customer. The man ran a tongue along his teeth as he looked her up and down. He quoted her a price.
That's double what they're worth, Cupid told her.
That's fine. Chloe produced the cash from her purse, but didn't hand it over to the man.
How much more you got in there?
The man gave her a feral grin. He glanced leisurely around the room, as if to convey she was alone with him. Chloe clenched her teeth.
Not enough for you to get a broken nose trying to take it from me.
His eyebrows shot up, but more in amusement than fear.
Is that so?
She slammed her palm down on his countertop, startling him.
I'm on a rescue mission. If you don't get your act together and get my firecrackers, I will beat you to a pulp and take them anyway.
She felt her cheeks flush with fury. She didn't have time to waste and meant every word. Well, maybe to a pulp had been an exaggeration. One of the rules of self-defense was not appearing meek or helpless. Not acting like a victim made you less likely to become one. The man backed away from her.
Okay. They're in the back.
As he left, she turned toward Cupid. Is he on the level, or is he going to come back with a sawed-off shotgun?
He's getting your black cats only. You've made your point.
She blew out a breath as she tried to steady her nerves. When the owner returned, they made the exchange. Cash for fireworks. And then he threw in some poppers for free. 2 minutes later, Chloe was out the door, in her car, and back on the road. Chloe parked her car a half-mile from the house where Zach was held captive. At least, that's what Cupid told her. She was putting a lot of faith in a ghost she'd only just met, but she did trust him.
I'll lead you through the brush to the house,
Cupid said. Chloe didn't move.
Chloe.
We're really doing this? I'm launching a rescue mission? His brow furrowed with worry.
We've been over the options. Calling the police will cause delays and potentially a hostage situation.
She nodded, but still didn't move.
What's wrong?
He asked. I don't know if I can do this. And if I don't do this, something bad could happen to Zach. If I do this and screw it up, Zach could get hurt. Or worse.
You can do this. You're a black belt.
Sure, in sparring. I don't actually fight anyone. I teach.
But you've trained, nonetheless.
Have you ever heard the saying, those who can't do teach? Well, that's me. I live in my sheltered, middle-class world, where I never actually have to get physical with anyone. Cupid turned in his seat and placed his hand on hers, through hers.
Today, that changes. Today, you're going to storm that house and free your beau. Today, you're going to teach those criminals they messed with the wrong fiancé.
She took a deep breath. KK, let's do this. She hopped out of the car and slammed the door shut. I'm ready. Cupid lowered his chin to his chest.
Your phone, Chloe. You need your phone to call the police at the right time. And you need the black cats to cause a distraction.
Right. She opened the driver's side door and grabbed her phone and the firecrackers.
We went over the plan.
I know.
Thrice.
She stretched her arms and legs. I'm nervous. Her mind swam with images of men wearing black with dark ski masks and guns, just as Cupid had described them. Chloe crept through the tall grass as she approached the dilapidated single-story farmhouse. The building was as Cupid described, steepled roof, white siding that was peeled and chipped, and weather-beaten shutters. Cooling AC units were packed into various windows and padded with tacky installation. They rattled noisily, as if working overtime to cool the house. Electrical wires crisscrossed before diving under the roof.
A green Jeep was parked beneath a slanted carport, which looked like a strong wind might topple it. Feeling a little like Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone, Chloe laid her traps. Poppers at the front door, as well as a tripwire. The wire was actually a 10-foot micro USB cable, but was the closest thing to a tripwire she found at the convenience store where she'd stopped. The poppers and wire wouldn't do much more than trip and scare the kidnappers, but this was a much-needed distraction. According to Cupid, there were 4 men, 2 of them armed. When she came in with firecrackers blazing, 2 men would bolt for the front door, 1 would go to the back door, and the other would check the status of the hostage. Chloe dialed 911 on her phone. When prompted to press a number if she couldn't safely speak, she did so. Then she placed the call on mute. She crouched outside the back door to the house, holding the firecrackers. "You're sure that door will bust when I kick it in?" "Yes, the frame is rotted, so it will break the wood around the lock, but not the lock itself." "And the keys are on the kitchen counter to the left?" "Yes, trust me." "KK, here goes nothing. Or everything." "All for love," Cupid said, with an encouraging smile. Chloe unmuted her phone, slipped it into the leg pocket on the side of her yoga pants, and lit the roll of Black Cat firecrackers. 5 seconds until detonation. She kicked in the back door, stepped inside, and hurtled the firecracker down the hall toward the living room where the 2 men dozed in front of the TV. Spinning back toward the kitchen, she grabbed the vehicle key, just as the firecrackers erupted in what sounded like automatic gunfire. 2 men rushed out of the master bedroom. 1 streaked past her as she crouched in the shadows. The other spotted her and lunged for her. Chloe dodged his big arms and jabbed an uppercut into his abdomen. He unleashed a surprised grunt. Stumbling back, he seemed to rethink his rushed attack. This time, he readied his stance and took a more calculated swing. She rolled into him, curving around the attempted strike, and cracked her elbow into his nose. When he tried to snatch her with his hand, she ducked and glided to a safe distance away. The attacker clutched at his bleeding nose, but never took his angry eyes off Chloe. "Wait for it," Cupid told her. The man lunged for her again. "Now!" Chloe reached up, pulled open the freezer door, and let the man collide face first into the steel. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Chapter 7. After hours of slow, painful effort, Zach had managed to liberate 1 wrist from the rope. He used his free hand to untie his ankles, all the while listening for sounds in case his kidnappers returned to the room they were keeping him in. The only noise was the rattling hum of the AC unit and the muffled sounds of a television. If he extricated himself from the chair, he could probably kick out the rusting AC unit and crawl out the window. Why hadn't they yet tortured him for information? Not that he was complaining. At first, they seemed to be waiting to catch Chloe. When that failed, Zach had overheard bickering among some of the men. An explosion of noise came from the other room. Was that gunfire? Screams followed. Had the police arrived? If so, it sounded like a botched rescue. Or had the men turned on each other? That might not go well for Zach either. He struggled to free his last hand, but wasn't fast enough before one of the kidnappers burst into the room. Loafers. His mask was gone, and he held a gun in one hand. Even without the mask, Zach didn't recognize the man as anyone he'd seen prior to tonight. But that didn't mean they hadn't crossed paths in Zach's many travels. Somehow, Loafers had known Zach's cybersecurity consulting job for True Health. Loafer's eyes went wide when he saw Zach's free hand. He rushed toward Zach, and Zach remembered his self-defense training from Chloe. He kicked up his free leg, hitting the man in the groin. With an agonized groan, his aggressor fell to his knees. Another person entered, a petite woman in a pink yoga outfit. "Chloe?" Zach did a double take. She looked down at the man writhing on the floor, clutching his injured part. "Well done," she congratulated Zach with a proud smile.
"How did you find me?"
"Explanations later. There are more bad guys out there." She pulled out a small pocket knife and sawed through his last restraint. His legs felt rubbery after sitting so long, but he forced them to move as he followed her to the back door. He gawked at the large man, brute, immobile on the floor. Had Chloe done that? Was she alone? She took his hand and led him to a jeep parked outside. "Go, go!" She ushered him into the passenger side. "There's one more armed kidnapper." As he climbed in and strapped on his seatbelt, she did the same. She produced keys, started the car, and threw it in drive. When a man stepped in front of the vehicle and took aim at them with a handgun, Chloe never slowed. Zach tensed as the gunman faced a choice: fire one round into the jeep that might hit the driver, but not in time to alter the path of the vehicle, or save his own life and dodge the jeep. The man dove to one side. He still fired a shot, but it went wild. Chloe let out a yip of terror, but kept the vehicle steady. Zach felt his heart threaten to pound through his chest. "Are you okay?" she asked him.
"I'm okay."
He looked down at his bleeding wrists.
"I don't understand what happened back there, but I'm okay."
"I won't allow kidnappers to ruin our wedding. That's what happened." Chloe gripped the wheel with one hand, pulling her phone from the thigh pocket of her exercise pants with the other. She spoke into it. "I'm turning off my phone now. Zach and I will drive to the station." She ended the call and put her phone back in her pocket.
"Who was that?"
"Police dispatcher." She pulled over to the side of the road where her Prius was parked. She got out of the Jeep and he followed her lead. She raced around to him and threw her arms around him. Her embrace felt like a homecoming, especially since he'd thought he'd never see her again. Or worse, he'd see her in the hands of his kidnappers.
"Chloe."
He squeezed her tight, relishing the feel of her close to him.
"You could have been hurt. They had guns. What were you thinking, running a one-woman rescue?"
She looked up at him, tears streaming from her eyes. "You. I was thinking about you, and what they'd do to you to get information. I couldn't trust anyone else to return you to me safely." He smoothed her hair back from her face and kissed her forehead. Later they could discuss this and how she'd found him. For this moment, he wanted to cherish her. He pulled her back into a tight embrace.
"Did I ever tell you you're the most amazing woman I know?"
When Zach and Chloe arrived at the police station, Chloe explained the situation, and Chloe and Zach were up until daybreak giving their statements. Chloe told authorities she'd tracked Zach through his phone when he didn't come home. When questioned about why she didn't notify the police, she explained that he was only late getting home, and it was too soon to file a missing persons report. As soon as she reached where he was, she called the police, but since she couldn't see inside and suspected Zach was in imminent danger, she couldn't wait for their arrival. So she detonated some robust fireworks she found outside the house and went inside to rescue him. She didn't like lying, and the police didn't seem completely satisfied by her explanation, but her exhaustive personality seemed to wear them down. The police informed the couple that the kidnappers were in custody when they released Chloe and Zach with a cautionary, "We'll be back in touch." Explaining events to Zach on the way home was a different matter. She couldn't lie to Zach. "Do you want the same version I told the police? Or the bizarre, mind-bending truth which involves potions and a ghost named Cupid?" He grinned.
"I can't fathom how you found me. The police said you traced my phone, but these creeps were no amateurs. They wouldn't have left my phone on, except briefly when they texted you. And how did you text their phones?"
She gave a sheepish grin. "You're a logical man. My explanations will not be based in logic."
"I'm exhausted, and everything seems surreal. I think if you told me you rode a unicorn with a leprechaun on your shoulder to come to my rescue, I'd just accept it."
He reached over and held her hand.
"Let's get home. get some sleep, and tell me all about potions and Cupid tomorrow.
Chapter 8. Chloe stood in her dressing room, white gown flowing around her. Her hair was pinned up away from her face, and she wore teardrop diamond earrings. Emma dabbed tears away from her eyes with a tissue. I can't believe this is finally happening, and all because Aunt Rose loaned you a ghost for a week. I'm so glad you believed my story. I lived through it, and I'm still not sure I believe what happened. Once you've seen half the bizarre things Aunt Rose does, ghosts don't seem so far-fetched. And Cupid of all ghosts. Maybe he can play matchmaker for me next. Cupid appeared beside Chloe, an admiring look on his face.
I've come to wish the bride well on her special day. And what a beautiful bride you are.
Emma, Cupid is here. Can you give us a minute so I can say goodbye?
Sure thing.
Emma gathered up the hem of her pink maid of honor dress and slipped out of the dressing room. Chloe turned to Cupid and smiled. I wish I could hug you right now. This is as far as we've ever gotten, and it's all because of you.
You don't give yourself enough credit. You're the one who had the tenacity to make your wedding day a reality.
Will you be there today? Chloe asked.
I wouldn't miss it for all the arrows in Robin Hood's quiver.
And then you're gone?
And then I'm gone. Hopefully, the next time a young woman or young man calls on me for help, it won't be such a dire situation. One nail-biting, kidnapping, edge-of-your-seat suspense is enough for me for the next 100 years.
Chloe nudged his apparition with her elbow. I don't know. You might get bored.
Love is many things, but never boring.
Thanks again.
Go get your bow.
A few minutes later, Chloe stood at the back of the church, arm in arm with her father. He patted her forearm.
Today's the big day.
For real this time. Chloe couldn't stop smiling. As the music played, her father escorted her down the aisle. She was surrounded by both her and Zach's family and friends. Rose was in the crowd, with Cupid sitting beside her. Rose winked at her, and Chloe wondered if Cupid had told her much of what had happened. Emma stood near the altar with the bridesmaids. Then Chloe's eyes fell on Zach, and at long last they said their vows. Zach danced with his mesmerizing, beautiful wife, with her silken brunette hair and white dress. She looked like a princess. She was always beautiful in her exercise clothes, but today she looked exquisite. Her entire body glowed from head to toe, his supernova. Chloe had given an outlandish tale of how she'd rescued him the other night. She'd chatted on about a ghost and setting traps, but it all seemed impossible. And yet, he had no other explanation. She'd even gone so far as prove she was omniscient through Cupid by having Zach hide things in the house from her and having her ghost tell her where the items were. So odd. But he'd always liked her quirks and her spunk. What mattered more than mythical creatures was the end result. He was free, they were safe, and they had said their vows. Chloe had been in charge of choosing the music. For their first song, she picked Sam Cooke's Cupid. Zach didn't need anyone to strike him or Chloe with an arrow of love like the lyric suggested. That had already happened years ago. But the song was soothing and perfect anyway. Of course, as long as he was dancing with his wife, Chloe could have picked any song, and it would still have been one of the happiest days of Zach's life. The end.